Walter Wofford back with another step, another piece for the short-term rental cash flow roadmap. Okay, so today we're going to talk specifically about performance leases, and this only applies to arbitrage. And so it takes a view of the owner, property owner, and the STR operator, and it compares the positions, and we have 5 different models that you can choose from and deploy in your own business. Okay, as always, I've got my AI team, Bill and Judy, to help me with the content and the delivery. So if you'd like to see what our properties look like and the hospitable direct booking site, just take your camera and focus on the QR code, and it'll take you directly there and take a look. All right, 5 models. Performance lease. Walter Wofford, thank you.
Short-term rentals, STRs, I mean, they've just exploded, haven't they? Turning properties into, well, serious income streams.
Absolutely. It's been transformative for a lot of owners.
But it brings up this really interesting, sometimes tricky question. How do property owners and the operators, the people running the STR day to day, how do they fairly share the money?
Exactly. It's more than just splitting profits.
Yeah, it's about setting up an agreement that works for both sides, right? Needs to be transparent, clear, and allow for growth down the line.
That's the core challenge.
So today, that's what we're diving into. Performance lease profit models for STR operations. We're pulling our insights directly from Walter Wofford's guide, 5 performance lease profit models for STR operations. Really practical stuff.
It is. Very actionable.
And our mission today, it's to unpack these 5 specific models. We want to get into the details, the pros, the cons, and crucially, figure out who each model actually fits best. We want to give you a clear roadmap for navigating these agreements.
And you're spot on. It's not just about the revenue splits. Walter Wofford really stresses that these models define the partnership.
Right.
They dictate risk, how risk is shared, and the potential for growth for both the owner and the operator. Our goal is really to give you those actionable insights so you can choose the right fit.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Performance lease. We hear that term a lot in the STR world. What exactly is it? How is it different from just, a standard fixed rent?
That's the fundamental question. So a performance lease, at its heart, is a flexible agreement.
Yeah.
The income from the short-term rental gets shared between the owner, the lessor, and the operator, the lessee.
Okay.
But the key difference, the real shift, is that the split isn't fixed. It's based directly on how well the property actually performs, how much revenue it brings in.
Hence performance makes sense.
Exactly. And this flexibility is why it's often preferred in the STR market. I mean, this market is dynamic, right? It changes.
Totally. Seasonality, events.
Right. And a performance lease aligns incentives beautifully. Think about it.
Yeah.
In a traditional lease, the landlord might almost be betting against the tenant doing too well in some ways.
Huh. Interesting way to put it.
But here, everyone's rowing in the same direction. Both the owner and the operator are motivated to maximize bookings, maximize revenue, because they both benefit directly when the property does well. It fosters a much more collaborative relationship.
Okay, so it avoids that potential adversarial thing you get with fixed leases sometimes.
Precisely. It's built for partnership from the ground up.
All right, so Walter Wofford lays out 5 specific models. Let's get into them. We'll start with probably the most straightforward one.
Yeah, the foundation, the revenue share model.
Okay, revenue share model. So the structure here is pretty simple. The operator pays the owner a flat percentage of the gross monthly STR income. And this is before expenses are taken out, right?
Correct. Gross revenue, top line.
And the typical range Wofford mentions is, what, 25% to 40% of that revenue?
That's the usual ballpark, yeah.
Yeah. So, quick example. STR makes $6,000 in a month. If the deal is 30% to the owner, they get $1,800.
Simple math.
Simple math.
Yeah.
So for the owner, the pros seem pretty clear. It's passive income mostly. It tracks performance directly. It's easy to track. You mentioned tools like RelayFi can even automate it.
Yep, automation makes it very clean.
And the owner has no day-to-day operating hassle. What about the cons, though?
Well, the big one is variability. There's no guaranteed income. If the property has a slow month, the owner's income drops too.
Right.
And it relies heavily on the operator being transparent and accurate with those revenue numbers.
So trust is still a factor. Who's this best for them?
Wofford suggests it's best for owners who, want to benefit directly from strong performance. Maybe they believe in the property's potential, but they also have the financial cushion to handle some ups and downs in income.
Makes sense. You need that tolerance for variability.
Exactly. The simplicity is appealing, absolutely. But that direct link between owner income and operator performance, it cuts both ways. It raises that question you hinted at. How much income swing are you, as an owner, truly comfortable with for passive income? Is this mortgage money or bonus money?
That's a really practical filter. Okay, so if that pure revenue share feels maybe a bit too exposed, a bit too variable, the next model seems designed to address that.
It does. It introduces a layer of stability.
Let's talk about the base rent plus performance bonus. So the structure here is different. The owner gets a fixed base rent each month, guaranteed.
Yep, a safety net.
And then they get a bonus, usually a percentage, but only when the STR generates income above a certain agreed upon level, a threshold.
Right, so a floor plus some upside.
Okay, let's use an example. Say $1,000 base rent, plus maybe 15% of any revenue over $4,000.
Okay.
So if the property brings in $6,000 that month, the owner gets the $1,000 base.
Guaranteed.
Plus 15% of the amount over the threshold. So $6,000 minus $4,000 is $2,000. 15% of that is $300. So total for the owner, $1,000 base plus $300 bonus equals $1,300.
Exactly.
Pros for the owner seem obvious. That stable base rent is huge for predictability. But there's still an incentive for performance, right?
Yeah.
It motivates the operator to push past that threshold.
Definitely. It keeps the operator aiming higher.
Cons. Well, in really strong months, the owner might actually earn less than they would have on a pure revenue share.
True. The upside is capped compared to a straight percentage of everything.
And it's a little more complex to calculate than just a flat percentage. Not rocket science, but still.
A couple more moving parts, yeah.
So who's this for? Wofford suggests owners who really need that predictable income baseline, maybe for mortgage payments, like you said, but are still open to getting some performance incentives.
It's a good middle ground for many.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It's like a hybrid, isn't it? It offers both that safety net and a reason for the operator to strive for more. It feels like a smart evolution.
It absolutely strikes that balance. It changes the psychology. The owner isn't just hoping for good months. They have a guaranteed floor. And the operator isn't just sharing revenue. They have a clear target to hit to unlock bonuses and keep more of the upside beyond that. It removes some of that potential friction.
Okay, building on that incentive idea, the third model Wofford outlines takes it another step further. The tiered revenue split.
Right, this one layers the incentives.
So here, the revenue is split using different percentages based on performance brackets. The key thing is the owner's share actually increases as the property performs better.
Exactly. Higher tiers mean a bigger slice for the owner.
For example, maybe the first $3,000 of revenue, the owner gets 20%. That's $600.
Okay.
Then for the next $3,000, so revenue between $3,001 and $6,000, maybe the owner's share jumps to 30%. That's another $900 on that portion. So if the total income hits $6,000, the owner gets the $600 from the first tier plus the $900 from the second tier for a total of $1,500.
Got it. The effective percentage goes up as revenue climbs.
Exactly. Pros for the owner, potentially higher rewards during peak performance. It's got this built-in incentive for the operator to keep pushing to reach those higher tiers.
Keeps them motivated to optimize, definitely.
Cons. Well, it's getting more complex to calculate for sure. You need good tracking.
Yeah. Bookkeeping needs to be tight.
And maybe requires more oversight to ensure it's all calculated correctly. Wofford suggests this is best for properties with pretty variable income, maybe strong seasonality, and where the operator has real potential to grow the revenue over time.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how explicitly this model incentivizes growth. It's not just about hitting a single threshold. It's about consistently pushing past previous performance levels. It really encourages the operator to unlock new levels of profitability.
Yeah, it feels very performance-driven. Okay, model number 4. This one feels like a bigger shift because it brings expenses into the calculation directly. The flat fee plus profit split.
Right. Now we're talking net profit, not just gross revenue.
Okay, so the structure. The operator pays the owner a fixed lease amount, like a base rent. Then, after all the operating expenses are paid, the remaining profit is split between the owner and the operator according to some agreed percentage.
Usually something like 50-50 on the profit split, but it can vary.
Let's run an example. Revenue, $6,000 again. But now, let's say operating expenses, cleaning, supplies, utilities, whatever, total $3,000.
Okay, so $3,000 left as profit.
Right. Now, say the owner gets a $1,000 flat fee, the fixed lease part, plus, let's say, a 50% split of that $3,000 profit, that's another $1,500. So the owner's total take is $1,000 flat plus $1,500 profit share equals $2,500.
Makes sense.
Pros for the owner, you still get that fixed baseline income. But there's also potentially high upside from the profit share, and crucially, it forces transparency around expenses.
Yes, the expenses have to be tracked and agreed upon.
Which leads to the cons. This model requires a lot of trust, right? Or at least view-only access to the operator's books.
Absolutely. Trust or verification is key.
Because disputes could easily pop up over what counts as a legitimate expense. Was that marketing spend really necessary? That kind of thing.
Exactly. Expense classification can become a sticking point.
So Wofford says this is best for really collaborative partnerships where there's already a high degree of trust in the operator's financial reporting. Yeah. You hit on that critical point, trust. It feels like the absolute cornerstone here. What happens when that transparency isn't, rigorously maintained? Where does it break down?
You're absolutely right. Trust is foundational. And where it breaks down, well, we've seen disputes over literally everything. Cleaning supplies, a specific marketing campaign, even how maintenance costs are categorized.
Oh.
The real insight, I think, isn't just about sharing numbers. It's about agreeing upfront on what those numbers mean. Having clear categories, clear definitions of what constitutes an operating expense versus, say, a capital improvement. Without that shared framework established before you start, disagreements over what counts can just poison the well very quickly.
So clear definitions from the outset are non-negotiable for this one.
Absolutely critical.
Okay, that brings us to the fifth and final model. This one seems geared towards owners who prioritize stability maybe above everything else. Minimum guarantee plus shared upside.
Yes, maximum safety net for the owner, you could say.
So the structure, the owner gets a guaranteed minimum payment every single month, no matter what.
Rock solid floor.
Plus, similar to the base plus bonus, they get a percentage of the income, but only the income above a certain threshold. It might be gross income here, which is simpler.
Often gross, yeah. Simplifies the calculation again.
Example time. Minimum guaranteed rent is $1,200. The threshold is set at $5,000 in gross revenue.
Right.
Let's say the STR earns $6,500 this month. The owner gets their $1,200 guaranteed, plus a bonus. Let's say the bonus is 20% of the income above the $5,000 threshold.
Right.
So $6,500 minus $5,000, $1,500. 20% of that is $300.
Right.
So total owner income, $1,200 guarantee plus $300 bonus for $1,500.
Right at.
Pros for the owner. Maximum stability, that guarantee is golden. There's still some bonus upside. It's generally low-risk, passive income for them, and it still gives the operator an incentive to push past that threshold.
Keeps them engaged in growth.
Bonds. The operator likely retains more of the total upside compared to other models, and in really booming months, the owner might earn less than they would under, say, a pure revenue share or even a tiered split.
The owner trades maximum upside for maximum security.
So Wofford positions this as best for owners who really truly prioritize that predictable cash flow, but still want some participation in the property's success.
Exactly. To build on your point, this model is really designed for owners who value that consistent cash flow above almost all else, while still getting a small piece of the upside. It minimizes the owner's downside risk, perhaps more than any other model. It's almost like a prenup for your STR. Sets clear expectations for good times and bad.
Huh, I like that analogy. A prenup for your STR. Okay, so we've walked through all five. From the simple percentage splits to these more complex hybrids involving base rents, tiers, and profit shares. It's clear there's no single best answer, right?
Definitely not. It's a spectrum.
It depends so much on what you, the owner or the operator, value most. Is it predictability, maximum upside, simplicity?
Risk tolerance is huge, too.
Absolutely. So now that we've unpacked each one, let's look at how Walter Wofford helps us compare them directly. He provides tables looking at it from both the owner's and the operator's point of view. Let's start with the owner-centric comparison.
Okay, focusing on the owner's perspective first.
Wofford's table looks at things like owner risk, upside potential, income predictability, and how complex each model is. And it's interesting that minimum guarantee plus upside model often seems to hit a kind of sweet spot for owners.
It frequently comes up as balanced.
Right, balanced. But what does that mean in practice? It suggests it aligns really well for owners who maybe aren't trying to squeeze every last potential dollar out, but who really value Well, sleeping at night.
That sleep at night factor is key.
It offers that steady cash flow, you get some share of the success, but it really minimizes the downside risk. It scores low on owner risk, high on income predictability in Wofford's analysis.
Makes sense.
Now, contrast that with the pure revenue share model we started with. High upside potential, sure, but also higher owner risk and lower predictability. It's a pure performance play, for better or worse.
And as an owner, you really have to step back and evaluate those trade-offs based on your own situation. Your financial goals, yes, but maybe even more importantly, your personal risk tolerance.
Yeah.
Do you need that steady income for fixed obligations? Or are you comfortable with more volatility because you see it as more of a growth investment and you can ride out the slow months? Your personal finances really dictate which balanced option actually feels balanced to you.
Great point. Okay, let's flip the script. Now, the operator-centric comparison. Looking at it from the STR operator's perspective really changes the calculus, doesn't it?
Completely different set of priorities often comes to the forefront.
This table focuses on things like operator risk, their upside potential, how much control they have over cash flow, and again, complexity. What jumps out here is the flat fee lease model.
Yes, the arbitrage model, essentially.
Right, where the operator pays a fixed rent to the owner and keeps everything else. Wofford notes this gives operators the absolute maximum upside and autonomy. They control their destiny profit-wise.
Total control, total upside beyond the rent.
However, it also comes with the highest risk for the operator. They're on the hook for that fixed rent payment every month, rain or shine, busy season or dead season.
That fixed cost can be brutal in slow periods.
So Wofford concludes it's really best suited for experienced operators, people with a proven track record who understand their market deeply and, crucially, have the financial reserves to cover rent during those inevitable downturns.
Experience and capital are prerequisites, really.
And then you contrast that with, say, the revenue share only model again. From the operator's view, that one has very low risk. They aren't guaranteeing any payment if the revenue isn't there.
Much lower barrier to entry.
Which makes it potentially a much better starting point for newer operators, right? People just getting into the STR business, maybe testing the waters. With less capital, they have to put at risk up front.
Absolutely. An operator's choice here really reflects their stage of business, their experience, their capital reserves, and frankly, their appetite for control versus their need to minimize downside risk.
Yeah.
It's a very strategic decision. For that seasoned operator, the flat fee lease might be where they build serious wealth. But for someone starting out, taking on that fixed liability could sink them quickly if bookings aren't consistently strong right out of the gate.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, so beyond the core profit split structures, Wofford adds some really practical bonus enhancements. These are things you can build into any of these lease models to make them work better.
Yeah, these are about strengthening the agreement itself.
First one, annual escalators. Pretty simple idea, right? Just include a clause for a small yearly rent increase, maybe 2% to 5%, to keep pace with inflation, or maybe reflect expected performance gains over time.
Keeps the base relevant over a multi-year agreement. Smart.
Second, RelayFi bank automation. We touched on this, but it's worth emphasizing. Using tools like RelayFi to set up virtual sub-accounts.
Yeah, dedicated accounts for income, owner splits, operating expenses.
Right, so the gross revenue lands in one pot, and the system automatically splits it according to the agreement. Owner's share goes here, operator's share goes there, maybe funds for taxes or expenses go somewhere else.
It takes a manual calculation and potential disputes right out of the equation for the core splits. It's like having an automated, impartial financial referee.
Exactly. Builds transparency, reduces arguments about who owes what and when, and third, shared dashboards or view-only access.
This is about visibility.
Yeah, allowing the property owner to see the live financial activity, but without being able to actually control anything. Using tools like, RelayFi again, or Stessa, maybe AirDNA dashboards.
These tools often pull data directly from the booking platforms, bank accounts.
Right, so the owner gets real-time insight into revenue, maybe key expenses, occupancy rates. Everyone's looking at the same data.
And that shared view is incredibly powerful. These practical additions, the escalators, the automation, the dashboards, they might seem secondary, but they are vital.
Yeah.
They build trust. Trust is the absolute bedrock of any successful partnership, especially when money is involved. And these streamline operations, removing those little friction points that can build up over time. Honestly, getting these enhancements right can be just as important as kicking the right profit split model for the long-term health of the collaboration.
That's a great perspective. It turns the agreement from just numbers on paper into a smooth, transparent working relationship. Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive. Walter Wofford leaves us with some final thoughts targeted specifically at owners and operators. If you're a property owner listening to this,
The advice is clear.
choose a model that really balances your personal risk tolerance with how hands-on or how hands-off you genuinely want to be. Are you looking to ride the potential highs and lows, or are you building a consistent, predictable income stream? Be honest with yourself about that.
Self-awareness is key.
And if you're an STR operator, maybe an arbitrage tenant, Wofford's advice is tiered. If you're just starting out, lean towards the lower risk models. Consider revenue share or maybe base rent plus bonus. Lower your initial risk, prove your model works.
Build that track record.
Exactly. Then once you're confident, once you've got that track record and hopefully built up some financial reserves, then you can strategically think about shifting towards models like the flat fee lease, where you can capture more of the upside and maximize your profit potential.
It's a phased approach based on experience and stability.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, for a final thought.
As you consider all these different models, maybe try to think beyond just the percentages and the thresholds for a moment. Ask yourself, what unspoken assumptions about partnership, about transparency, about how growth should be shared? What assumptions are baked into the structure of each model? And how might those underlying assumptions affect the long-term health and success of your specific STR venture? Because choosing the right partnership model, it isn't just about the immediate financial split. It's really about building a sustainable, resilient, and mutually beneficial business relationship for the long haul.
That's a powerful question to leave people with. What's really underneath the numbers?
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive has given you a clearer framework. We encourage you to really explore which model or maybe which combination of elements resonates most with your own goals, your resources, and your vision for your property or your business. Because as we've seen, a well-chosen performance lease really can be the key that transforms a property into a genuinely passive, profitable asset for an owner or a high-growth, high-upside business for an operator. Thanks for diving deep with us today.